Water underpins every aspect of human and environmental existence. International Water Association members are made up of 140 countries worldwide, making it the largest international network of water professionals in the world. What we want to acknowledge today and celebrate is that South African water sector specialists have made it to the highest level of recognition in international bodies. Join us for a conversation today with our special guest, Professor Hamanth Kasan. Professor Kasan covers many roles. He's the General Manager, Scientific Services at Rand Water in South Africa, is also the Vice President and International Water Association Distinguished Fellow, a non-executive director of the International Water Board, and also a member of the International Water Association Governance Committee. Professor Kasan's educational and training background includes a PhD in Science, a graduate diploma in engineering, a graduate diploma in company direction, management and executive development programs, and also several other leadership programs. He's also a certified coach through the International Society of Neurosemantics, as well as an extraordinary professor at the University of Pretoria. So stay with us for this conversation with the African Water Chamber, Dr. Anthony Turton, Fred Platt, and Benoit Leroy, and our special guest, Professor Kasan. Don't go away. We will be right back. If you're just joining us, then welcome to the Water Hour. I'm your host, Betty Limbanda from Cape Town in South Africa, and this live stream is brought to you by BeLive Media and the South African Water Chamber. This is an audience-centric show, so please feel free to comment, say hello, or pose a question to any of our panelists in the chat today. Joining us is from the South African Water Chamber, Fred Platt, Benoit Leroy, and our special guest, Professor Hamanth Kasan. So let's welcome them to the screen. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you join us today. Hamanth, a special warm welcome to you, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. Very important one. We often talk about water, but I don't think we've ever had a session where we celebrate the people in the water profession. And Hamanth, I'm looking forward to learning more about the path that you followed. So you have been with the International Water Association for a long time. But before we dive into that, Benoit, can I ask you to just give us a brief overview for people who don't know what the South African Water Chamber is about? Just tell us very briefly.
Yeah, well, firstly, welcome to everybody, and especially to Hamanth. And today I'm going to boast. We seem to be an aggregator of top world performers, and yes, in the water sector. And you know, it's such a hot topic. Having spent the weekend with the minister and his team in the Water Summit, I'm busy writing an article in between things. So hopefully I get it done this week. I'll publish it on social media and LinkedIn and the likes, because there's a lot of doom and gloom around, and you know, we know what's going on. It's how we dig ourselves out of it, how we drive solutions and the likes. And that's where the Water Chamber sits. And we were really honored to be there was 8 commissions, and we were asked to chair one commission, and it was quite a key one, managing pollution and water quality, which is quite a hot topic. And I hope it wasn't the summit that induced the scaremongering that's going around. We're in the typhoid season, and people got short memories, and maybe we just need to shock them into what happened this time last year. And it's generally speaking not our water that's causing these issues, but we do have issues. But we've got so many solutions, and we've got a 150-year history in water in this country. And in actual fact, I met Hamanth a very long time ago, and I wanted to hear about water, and I heard about SQ and EQ, and I'd never heard about this before, especially in the water context. And that was in the days when things were functioning at, let's say, at a much better level than what we have now. And so we have all sorts within our ranks, which is really nice. We're all humans, in the end. But what we're finding, and as a water chamber, we've been driving this from the private sector for the last 4 years now, is that most people do want to do good. They just sometimes need to be pointed in the right direction. And also sometimes, you need political buy-in from the top office, which we have. And that tends to open a lot of good things. And so I'm not happy where we're at, but I'm happy where we're going. And I think that's really, really the good point. In our water sector, there's a lot of dissatisfaction. There's a lot of mistrust. And in actual fact, a lot of people asked me over the weekend, why am I going to go and waste my time in a talk shop? And I said, no, our team, we don't go to talk shops, okay? We do action, and we talk people into action. We coerce them into action. And I must say the media covered it quite well. There's a lot of good stuff, and in actual fact, there's certain data we put together that we have to do things like in the National Infrastructure Plan 2050, and we see these things are actually starting to materialize. From the private sector, we must stop pointing fingers. We must jump in, and we must hold the people accountable to the timeframes that they're putting down there. And that's that's really part of our job. And there's a nice way to do it. We are humans in the end. There's a nice way to do it, but we have to be forceful and reasonably polite, okay, and direct, so that there is no latitude for getting to where we're at now. And if you look at, at the Eastern Cape, at the dire water situation that we have, and quite honestly, there's very little hope down there at the moment, and we have to try and change that around. And there's a lot of people involved. There's big business involved who want to change it. And Fred and I have been involved in the past week with quite a few people in person and virtually to try and rectify the situation. So we know we have a water issue. We know that we can sort it out. We know that we have political will. And now we just have to, herd the cats and get it done. And I think the chamber is absolutely key as one of the stakeholders, lobby groups and the like to do that. And, with Hamanth on board, that's going to help us a lot. Since he's retired from Rand Water, he's now able to dedicate more time, because, we've been talking to Hamanth for a while, and, we need people who know what we did wrong, how we did them wrong, how we get things done right. And the thing is, Rand Water is a world-class utility. We have never had any major issues when it comes to the water. It's the water quantity is the issue, but not the water quality. And Hamanth was driving the water quality in the scientific services. And I'm not really nationalistic, except if it comes to rugby. But when it comes to water, I also become a little bit nationalistic, because I get thrust down my throat. This country invented this country did this and that. And I said, well, no, they didn't. We did. And the thing is, we're importing what we invented and what we commercialized and the likes. So, and we still have some of those genetics around. And what we need to do is try and, the world's a small place, is try and aggregate these interests, try and connect them to everybody, and to believe in ourselves that we can dig ourselves out of the hole that we have. And it's a R1 trillion hole. So before I carry on and hog it any further, that's really where we're at with it. And I'm really happy with the caliber of people that we're able to attract, into our organization. Look forward to many more. Thank you.
Thanks, Benoit. And before we hand over the floor to Hamanth, Fred, just a quick word on why businesses should get involved with the South African Water Chamber.
Well, for me, I think for too long we have believed or had the belief that our fate is in the hands of politicians alone, and that we need to sit back and wait for a plan to be developed, etc., etc., and then we sit and complain, and we really see where the situation is developed. So over the last couple of years, the South African Water Chamber has tried to change that narrative. I think Benoit spoke about a couple of things which are critical. The first thing is that there has to be political will, and we've been working really hard on that side of it. There's got to be a financial model that works and that is sustainable. But more importantly than that, we've got to start believing in ourselves, and we've got to start developing workable plans and projects that we can drive as business in conjunction with management or with government. And I think a critical component of that is to look at ourselves, believe in ourselves, know what our DNA is as a country and our abilities. And I think, having Hamanth with us today is just an example of the type of leadership that we can take. Now, we've got to brag a little bit about Hamanth being a leader globally, not just locally. And I think if we take a leaf from that leadership as business and we say, you know what, if we are capable of operating at the highest level internationally in the water sector, then surely we should be able to put plans together that can get the buy-in of all the stakeholders, where we can put the common good.
Fred, I'm afraid we can't hear you.
Sorry, I think I went on mute as I was getting all excited. So I don't know where you heard up to, but basically what I was saying is let's draw from the example of someone like Hamanth, who internationally is a leader, and let's develop that leadership platform within the local environment where we can bring everyone together in the execution of what is a critical common good, but at the same time, the ultimate economic enabler. So business doesn't only have a responsibility to do that, it has a huge stake in the game. And we have to raise our awareness, our involvement, and ultimately our engagement around this platform.
Thanks very much for that background, much appreciated. Hamanth, you are a board member and the vice president of the International Water Association. Could we ask you to please just talk a little bit about how you got to this point in your career and just maybe the highlights along the path?
Sure. Thank you very much. Much appreciate the opportunity to be part of this conversation today. Indeed, your question is quite relevant. How did I get involved with the International Water Association? Well, the story goes back slightly over 30 years now. That's not telling my age in any way, right? But just a little over 30 years ago, I was doing a PhD at Wits, right, in science. At that time, during your PhD studies, as is traditional, you need to do a lot of research and you need to innovate something new. So the foremost journal in the world, the scientific journal, was water research. Up till this day, water research has the highest impact factor, which will be of meaning to academics, because once you publish in high impact journals, factor journals, your likelihood to be promoted to professorial level, etc., is very good. So at that time, the International Water Association didn't exist. There were two associations. One dealt with the clean water, and the other association dealt with the drinking water. Nonetheless, the nice thing about these two international associations, other than the journal, for which I was reading a lot of papers and using a lot of material from, was the fact that they promoted postgraduate students to have free membership of this association, which I thought was a brilliant idea. I therefore became a member with no cost at all at the time of being a PhD student. And I began to receive literature and access. In those days, there was no internet and like that, but you would get, some material by mail and so forth. So once I was done being a student, I saw the value of being a member of the International Water Association, and therefore I remained a member. And I've been a member ever since then. Now, how did I navigate the path of moving up to the kind of level where I operate with the International Water Association today? It's been a long journey. I was very intrigued with the work of the association. They currently have about 10,000 members. You mentioned over 100 countries across the world. And essentially, the IWA's mission is to inspire change. Global change in respect of water and sanitation provision. So it is an international fraternity of top-level experts. And they hold congresses, symposia. They have over 65 specialist groups on every topic in water that every member is free to join. So over the years, as I became more engaged in some of these specialist groups, some of the congresses, to present papers, which are all peer-reviewed and of very high caliber, and began to feel the pulse of people, professionals from all over the world that are really seeking and yearning for excellence, that I was really energized by the notion that here lies a fraternity that I could call, frankly, a home for water professionals. And so I took to this association. And in many ways, the rest is history. I got more engaged and more excited. And there more than likely hasn't been a single biennial event that I've not attended in over 30 years, and been energized by the community of professionals all over the globe. Can't hear you, Brigade.
That's quite a journey, and amazing, and a long journey it's been, and I'm sure it doesn't feel like it's that many years. So congratulations. Can you talk a little bit about some of the programs that you've been involved with over the years?
Indeed. The organization is quite complex in the form that its foremost governing authority is the governing board, the board of directors. So I've had the privilege of serving as vice president previously, and then took a cool-off period, so to say. And so I'm serving again as vice president and on the board. My previous aspiration was to be president, so I have run as president of the association once before. Some of the programs that the organization has, every 2 years is a biennial congress, which is a huge event in a different part of the world. Every intermediate year, there's a development congress, which focuses on developing country issues and looking at solutions, technologies, approaches, methodologies, lessons learned, etc., for developing countries. Then there is a leading edge technology conference. And by the way, that event will be held in towards the end of March in Reno, Nevada. That particular gathering looks at the best technologies, the most cutting edge technologies that are being innovated for water and sanitation. Then, as I mentioned, there's the 65 specialist groups. So you can almost name the aspect of water, be it management, be it nutrient removal, be it anaerobic processes, be it the Internet of Things. There is a specialist group of people that have that interest, and those specialist groups also run their own events and their own congresses. So at one point in time before the COVID, it was almost the case where the IWA was having an event somewhere in the world amongst its fraternity every 2 to 3 days. So it's a very, very active and very busy sector. China is growing amazingly. India is growing amazingly. And I think that to illustrate the point of how the world is evolving and the demographic is changing globally in terms of the IWA, the last event, which had to be held virtually, for the first time in the history of the IWA, the highest number of attendants was from China and India. So it's an evolving organization seeking relevance globally and inspiring action all over the world.
Wow, that is amazing. Let's talk a little bit about the importance of South African leadership in international bodies. Now, Benoit, I think it was you that mentioned, and Hamanth can confirm, but Benoit, I think you mentioned that South Africa has had 2 of the past 9 presidents of the International Water Association. Am I right?
Yes, that was straight off the website. One was Piet Odendaal, and I can't remember the other one, but Hamanth will remember.
Yes, this is a passionate subject for me. And, I was tempted to even show you a slide because during my presidential nomination, during my address, I presented a slide which shows every president in the history of the IWA since those 2 associations were merged. And really, I'm proud. I sit here proud as a South African. And I think South Africans ought to rejoice in the notion that 2 very, very distinguished South African water and sanitation professionals about 23 years ago. One was Vincent Barth, the CEO of Water. Vincent Barth served with me on the board of the Water Research Commission. I'm also privileged to have chaired that board. It wasn't too long thereafter that I was appointed at Water. And so I stayed there for 22 years, but it was Vincent Barth who really recruited me into Water. Now, Vincent Barth, the CEO of Water at the time, and Piet Odendaal, who was the CEO of the Water Research Commission at the time, each one had this notion that it was best to merge the Clean Water Association and the Drinking Water Association. So each one of these 2 gentlemen shared a term of presidency in the newly created International Water Association, which was some 23, 24 years ago. Since then, there have been 7 to 8, perhaps 9 presidents, none of which have been South Africans. Many South Africans have risen to heights in the International Water Association. Many are members, etc. But none have managed to rise to the level of the board, etc., aside from a couple of us. So I think South Africa has played a very, very special role, and particularly South African expertise at having the foresight to merge these 2 associations to make it one on the global stage. And from there on, South Africa has been on the map like you will not believe. So there's a lot of respect for South African expertise, technologies, associations, and so forth. So I think we really ought to be proud of our history. And you asked me the question, the importance of South Africans and South African water and sanitation professionals to be involved in professional associations. I can't overemphasize from my experience over the past 30 odd years how important it is for young professionals in particular and seasoned professionals to stay engaged with some of these fraternities. And there's quite a few of them in the world. Because if South Africa is going to overcome its water and sanitation challenges, then it cannot afford to be reinventing the wheel. We don't have time for that. The situation, as we've heard, is somewhat critical. It requires urgent action. It requires mobilization of resources, political will, the right expertise, the right technologies, the right execution schedules. Now, to have that, the South African professionals have to understand the global terrain. They have to be able to understand and be able to find the best expertise in the world in order for them to receive advice. The IWA is one such fraternity. Its intent is to provide solutions and a network of professionals who are capable of providing solutions to virtually any problem in water. So I think that I can't overemphasize that. The fact that South African professionals have traditionally played a very meaningful role. They ought to be supported. They ought to be developed. And I am sure that with that level of development, South Africa can make a huge step going forward, not only in South Africa, but also be part of the global fraternity of water professionals and helping other countries. Because in my experience, there's an awful amount that people from outside of South Africa have learned from South Africa as well. We have a lot to share. So it's not only about what we can gain, but also what we can share in terms of leapfrogging our own water and sanitation landscape in this country.
Can we talk a little bit about some of the technologies that have stemmed from South Africa that we can say are proudly South African ideas?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's going to make me sound a little old too now again. But, some of you might be aware that in 1965 was the year when the first fully sewage to water, drinking water recycling plant was built in the world. That was in Namibia, Southwest Africa. Okay. It's amazing. Now, since 1965, this was German and South African expertise. Since 1965 till 2022, I can count on my hands the number of plants we've put up in South Africa. Why? What happened? Did we just realize recently that we are a water-stressed country? Because we've been water-stressed since we put that plant up. So here goes again a great South African story, the recycling plant. The nutrient removal processes in wastewater treatment, the Badenville process. James Barnard, another legend from South Africa, who innovated that technology. Him and a group of professionals innovated that technology. And of course, then he left for the United States. I've had the privilege to meet him on many international forums, and he is so engrossed and so interested in the South African future that I know that even when he won global awards and prizes, he's donated those funds for research at the University of Cape Town, which I believe was his alma mater. So we have some great stories. The Water Research Commission has a whole string of stories. South African innovations that have been done, the membrane. Yep, the polymer membrane technology, which was innovated in Cape Town. Well, lo and behold, what happened? Before we could put in a full-scale plant of any sort in South Africa, Singapore had done it. Singapore had done it and captured the world's #1 space as the water technology hub of the world. Now, I've had the privilege of being involved with Singapore also over the last 30 years in serving on the program committee for the Singapore International Water Week, an event that will be occurring also in April. Now, here lies a global showcase of the most cutting-edge technologies. Singapore is serious about technology, innovation, efficiency, effectiveness, driving down price, customer value proposition, all the things that we should be aspiring to and learning from the rest of the world as to how to do it. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. It's been done. There's some great utilities, west coast of the US, etc., that are using the water recycling. There's some great studies in the Midwest of how water-stressed countries and states in the US cope with this sort of aspect. So we have a lot going on in the world. And unfortunately, it was a face-to-face event this past weekend with the Water Summit. I had a chat with Benoit, and some of us were not able to be there, but I followed it somewhat on the technology. And we should stop defining our problems in South Africa. I believe we know those very well. I think it's time to start solving.
I want to put you on the spot just a little bit, if you don't mind so much. How does it, coming from where you are now, how does it make you feel when they say we need to import water experts from other countries? Do we really need that?
Well, I don't know that we need that in the first place. But secondly, and more relevantly, I don't believe we're doing enough to develop our local expertise and expose them to the kinds of exposure that they need. Because it's one thing to be training engineers or scientists in universities. And of course, I've been at Rainwater for 22 years. And, part of my passion was the development of human capital. And we instituted a program there, which is unique information by bringing in graduate scientists, training them for several years And so as long as I was at Rainwater, I never ever maintained that there was a skills challenge. We had a pipeline, we have a process, our research processes, everything was innovated, and we received global accolades for these kinds of approaches. So I do believe that, you know, you have engineers at university, you have scientists at university, but they need to have the right kind of development after university. And then there's also the soft side, as I call it. If what you are learning and studying is not in line with your passion and your purpose, you're never going to enjoy it. You're never going to be the best at what you do. Now, in my own case, it took me a long time in my life to figure out what is it that I really wanted to do with my life. And I failed so many times, but I learned from every failure. And at a point, I realized that my passion lies around water, sanitation, coaching. I've innovated a program for water and sanitation professionals on coaching with different interventions, neurosemantic, etc. And these are the kinds of interventions you need to build capability in a society that becomes proud, that becomes responsible, that your genetic DNA is made up of some excellence genes. That's what we need, in my view.
Wow, your passion for the water industry is clear to see for all, you know, and also your passion for helping others. I think, you know, in a lot of professions, people want to hold on to the knowledge they've got, and they don't want to let go because they want to be seen as, you know, the professional. But it speaks a lot to the kind of leader you are when you are passionate about helping other water professionals get to the level where you are, you know. So how important is it to be involved in forums and international bodies, to exchange ideas and technologies?
Absolutely important and relevant at this point in time in the history of South Africa. I think that in some ways, we lost ground over the years. We did, to an extent, lose some ground. But I do believe that we can quickly make up. If you take a typical IWA conference or a Singapore International Water event, you will find that the people that present some of the technical information and the cutting edge approaches and the kinds of success that they enjoy from those approaches are very top people, like CEOs of the companies and the water utilities. So CEOs are just not people who are executives who are there to ensure that treasury regulations are followed and that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. These are people who have a passion for the business. They understand the business. They understand the different levers of the business. So when you ask me how important it is, I think it's critical for South African professionals to be meeting such kind of people, be they academic scientists, be they practitioners, be they consultants, so that they can feel the pulse on what is the meaning of excellence. You also then get a benchmark of how are you performing against some of the best in the world, you know, because in colloquial terms, you could be a big fish in a small pond, or you could be a small fish in a big pond. Which one are you? And what are you aspiring to do? You could find mentors. You will find that this fraternity is filled with people that are so helpful. And this is what makes us share our knowledge, in that we don't believe that there's any exclusivity of knowledge. We believe that by sharing, essentially, we're going to improve the well-being of people. So I think it's critical that young water professionals especially meet pedigreed water leaders in order to understand what this business is all about and how you can make a meaningful contribution before they get disappointed by meeting too many leaders who are not passionate about the business and who are really focused on other things. They're not able to energize this population and this young generation. Oops, you're muted.
Hamanth, I'm going to put you on the spot again. What's your favorite water story? If somebody said to you, a lot of water stories. What is one thing that has stood out for you over the years?
Well, I'll tell you what really excites me, and I'll give you a water story. What excites me is watching people receive water that had never received water before in their life. That's something that energizes me. The second thing is people receiving toilets, and you know that there's 3.8 billion people in this world who don't have sanitation. I think that that is the highest order contribution that a human being can make. Now, I have some water stories, and perhaps I'll share one with you. You know, I've really been an advocate of change in Africa, globally, in all of these associations, wherever I serve, on the boards of companies where I serve, etc. And sometimes you go into some associations and they've traditionally been, you know, many of these NGO type organizations are traditional kind of old boys club or old girls clubs in some instances, right? Now, how do you transform that? By making those organizations more relevant. How do you ensure that a professional in India, a professional in Africa, deep down in Africa or Latin America, who is really doing something wonderful for the society in terms of water and sanitation, becomes recognized at the global level? These are the kind of changes that we're trying to bring in terms of relevance. And I am just so excited by the notion of so much and so many great people across this world who actually have gone unrecognized but are doing amazing things in the water and sanitation space. Mine is a story of being fortunate, being resilient, being persistent in taking on these roles. Some people don't like taking on these roles. I took it on as a challenge. You know, some of my good news water stories include at the time when I was in Redwater. Can you believe that at Redwater we won the prize, the global prize for the water safety plan? This simply means that at that point in time, Redwater's water safety plan to ensure that 16 million consumers were receiving the best quality water was about the best in the world. And that's no small task, right? For a utility in Africa. We also won the Water Education Award. What that meant at the time was that our water-wise education program was the best in the whole world. Now, these are accolades that you don't give yourself. This is the international with a seasoned panel of judges across the world that make that determination. For me, at a personal level, you know, I've really enjoyed the IWA in particular. I was really honored recently, I think it was last year or 18 months ago, to be honored the title of distinguished fellow. There are few distinguished fellows in the world. There's perhaps maybe 20, maybe 30 at the outside, off the top of my head. And these are people that have really made some very serious contributions over protracted periods of time to the water fraternity. So I feel that for young water professionals who want to get engaged, who will become members of IWA, AFWA, and other organizations, and if they do engage themselves properly, yes, the world is looking for leaders, and the world is looking for new ideas. And I do believe that the world's willing to help people looking for new ideas and to solve problems.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. Benoit, I believe you may have a question for Hamanth.
More bolstering it, but you know, I get irritated on the one hand and more hopeful on the other hand, and energized in that we have all of this talent in this country and we are not harnessing it, and specifically in the water sanitation space. And we're going to do this. And I think I've got 2 points on that. One is there's the reindustrialization master plan for water and sanitation that we finished end of last year through the DTIC. And the Water Chamber drove very hard this after the master plan was published, the water sanitation master plan was published. And the reason we've pushed hard for this is that we were a net exporter of water supply chain goods, chemicals, pumps, valves, piping, tanks, systems, and the likes. And now we're net importers. And so not only are we going to rebuild our South African water security, we have to rebuild the entire supply chains that are involved in that. And it's an ideal opportunity. But what's key in that, and we saw that, is that the tertiary institutions have a certain lag time. And that lag time is about 4 or 5 years for the next cohort to, to go through. But I was very happy to see that, in all of our workshops, the various seaters were involved so that they can preempt the type of skills and new skills that we're going to need in the reindustrialization master plan. So I can see a very good role with the chamber and Hamanth in addressing that, because he's done so much work there. And also, if you look at recently, I think it's called Cleaning the Henops NGO, got international accolades for really a thankless task in trying to clean the debris and the likes, whilst creating jobs in cleaning the Henops. And the floods did not flush the pollution out. The floods actually flushed everything up into huge walls and all the likes. And business and the city of Tshwane have gotten stuck into this to support that NGO. And that practice, we've got a lot of pollution in the world, has actually been recognized, as Hamanth says, by international professionals. So, we must never let a good crisis go to waste. And I think there's some good stuff coming out of there. And Hamanth, I don't think we whispered in the ear very loudly how much you've got to give through the water chamber also. But I think there's really a lot of good stuff. But also, the more of us that put these pegs in the ground and then create the pull and the demand in the system, the more we're going to get all these skills back into the water direction and pull the new skills and the new generation in. Because quite honestly, for the last 20 years, we have not done very much. And that's why we have R1 trillion hole, in water infrastructure. But we have to catch up, which means it's going to be inordinately high amount of work. And for that, we have to have an enabling environment with the capacity that we require. And as Hamanth has said, is the world's actually a very small place. So wherever we've got little lapses of capacity, and so if you have to tap into Singapore's POB, for example, for certain things, it's quite easy to do these days. You don't have to do it in person either. We can do it virtually. So the skills are very, very mobile. And also, I think with the pandemic, we've learned to become a lot more efficient, where we don't have to do everything in person. So the exchange of technology, knowledge, experiences, project implementation, likes, a lot of it can be done a lot quicker. So there's absolutely no excuses. And I'm just endorsing what Hamanth has said. And I think a lot of this needs to be put out there in South Africa to understand and to appreciate that we do have the DNA, we do have the genetics, and we do have the ability, and we must believe in ourselves, and we must jump on the solutions bandwagon and not the fake news and stone throwing that we see a lot in social media. We need to, all of this needs to be converted to solutions driven, because it's for our benefit, it's for our dependents' benefits and the next generation's benefit. And quite honestly, if you can win the World Cup in rugby 3 times, we've won the World Cup, I would say, twice at the IWA with the 2 presidents. We need to do it a 3rd time and a 4th and a 5th time. So I'm on board. I'm on board.
Thanks for your support there. If I may say something quickly, Brigitte, it just occurred to me, you're asking about some success stories and South African technologies and innovations. One that comes to my mind that I did not mention, I'd like to mention now is, we hear of this challenge in South Africa, which is a reality, about the 3,000 plus schools that have a requirement for decent toilets, right? Well, guess what? Lo and behold, to make a long story short, we have a South African company that is capable of manufacturing a plant that'll do exactly the same job of a sewage works in treating the waste from the toilets and fully recycling the water back into the toilet, which a municipality is not able to do at this stage, right? So we have a solution. This solution was innovated in China, but it was modified and adapted in South Africa and is now on full South African production with 0 import. Proudly South African. So we should be looking at proudly South African solutions for South African problems. And they're out there. It's just that I'm not so sure sometimes whether we're serious enough to solve the problem, or is it the political will? Is it the financing? Sometimes we get caught in I'm not so sure what, because the technology enablers are there. I've been so controversial even at some events globally. And I've often said that if you switch the technology innovation engine off for a period of 1, 2, or 3 years, the water sector still has plenty of space in the sanitation sector to solve the problem of the 1.8 billion without water and the 3.7 billion without sanitation. So we shouldn't be relying on technology. It's about people, it's about the governance, it's about all of the other things. And if we can get those ducks in a row, I think the private sector is there, as we've agreed, and the president has also indicated that the private sector is able to execute quickly, efficiently, in overcoming this burden and solving the problems for people.
Well, that nutshells it very, very well. Fred, I see you smiling there. Your internet connection and the storm permitting, I think you're dying to say something.
Yeah, we got a bit of a thunderstorm, so I'll try and speak in between. But I think such an important point that Hamanth has just raised. Our problem sits between our ears. It's a people problem at the end of the day. We have the technology, it's available. We can cooperate globally. We can do whatever we want to. What is required? It's a belief in ourselves. It's a strong political will. It's a execution mindset that says we all putting our weight behind this and we're going to deliver. It's no different. Benoit spoke about the rugby. It's no different than going into a rugby game and saying, you know what, this is what it is. You can be a brilliant rugby team if you don't have the right mindset, if you don't believe in yourself, if you're not developing talent, if you're not focused on the outcome, then we'll just define the problem again, and we will just, at the end of the day, find reasons why we can blame someone. The only people we can blame as a country is ourselves, because either we're not holding our politicians to account, or we're not taking it up and saying, how do we turn this into action? And for me, the idea of if you listen to Hamanth, 90% of what he's spoken about is people development, people engagement, it's leadership, it's political will. So I hope that made sense, and it's not too noisy where I am.
No, thankfully the storm gave you enough time to just say that. So all good, and we heard you loud and clear. Benoit, did you have a final comment before we round up?
I think I've said too much. I think I've said a lot. I'm really thankful for Hamanth for making the time to join us today. I'm really happy he's agreed to, and he has joined the South African Water Chamber. So we've got another arrow in our ammunition over here, and we need the big hitters. We need the commitments. And I've got this thing about the SQ and IQ of water. The intelligence and memory of water. I've got some thoughts there. I'm sure we can, some sort of a straw man that we can do something. There's so many things flowing literally, at the moment, and it just reminds me of the biennial in Marrakesh, and then the next one I think was in Vienna, and the one in Vienna we had two issues that sort of stuck in my mind. The first one was the hotel that said, and it's topical, no Russian guests allowed, and I said, look, I'm from South Africa, am I allowed? And they laughed at me and they said, no, the Russians are very noisy and they break everything. So I thought, well, I'm no contest there. But the second thing in Vienna was, yes, Dr. Barnard got an award again as the top water scientist in the world in Vienna, and he'd been bestowed that long before for the BNR, just because of his work, in the water sector. And I was really proud of that, although he had an American accent already by then. But the other one was that Cape Town received the award for the pressure demand management. And it always sticks in my mind that we've had two political parties and both of them at odds with each other, but the officials still managed to do this under the previous administration, not the current administration, and it's carried on. And it's busy being, let's say, automated now. So must have had, under both administrations, political will, but keep your fingers out of it. Let the officials and the professionals do their work. And if you listen to Hamanth, you can hear why the professionals must be left, to do their work. But I think we have an element of trust being developed with the new Ministry of Water and Sanitation, who has also come out of Hollywood now and has a permanent DG. So now we have continuity and leadership and the likes. And what we saw on the weekend, I think is very encouraging for the sector, is that the officials can speak their minds without fear or favor. And in actual fact, were quite innovative. And a lot of them we know for a very long time, and they just weren't able or weren't led adequately. A lot of interruptions. And, when you have acting leadership, it's a show. It's not work. So to me, I think Hamanth has shown that we have done it, we can do it, and we will do it. So I'm really happy with today's outcome and really thankful for Hamanth for his input. And obviously, Fred, yours too. And Brigitte, thanks for arranging.
Absolutely. We have a lot to celebrate in South Africa. Hamanth, I'm going to give you the final word that you would like to share with our audience and water professionals out there.
Thank you very much. Well, let me start by saying thank you for inviting me to be part of the show and also to be part of the Water Chamber. I am a South African. I'm committed to this country, to making the difference that one should. I'm a water and sanitation expert. I'm delighted that there was a summit, and I'm sure that we'll interact with the minister and the DG soon. We stand ready to make the contribution that we are required to make. Albeit I have retired in inverted commas from Rainwater after 22 years, but all that this means is I've just changed my tires. So I now get to choose the exciting projects, the exciting things that I want to get involved in without having any operational responsibility, which I have been undertaking for 22 years. So I'm in a real good space. I'm looking forward to progress in South Africa. I'm looking forward to add value by connecting the dots of professionals across the world. And if any young professionals need any guidance or any help, I'm more than happy to assist in whichever way is necessary. I think that if we all work together, we will solve the problems of this country. And just like when we wrote the legislation with Kader Asmal, and then somewhat with Ronnie Kestrel, I was delighted to work with both of these experts. And we took the global stage for the remarkable work that we did. I do believe if we put our hands and our hearts together in a period of 5 years, we can become a classic case to show the world on how you overcome the deepest levels of water and sanitation challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that's an awesome note on which to finish our show today. Thank you so much. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Benoit. Thank you, Hamanth. Thank you to all our viewers out there who's watched the show live and anyone who's going to be watching this on the replay. And I'm sure that with our next episode, we will have Anthony Turton back with us. Again, he unfortunately was unable to join us today on the show. So thanks, everyone. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you on the next Water Hour.
Bye.